Hi, my name is Ellie Zumbrin. I am Pam's niece, and I'm a speech pathologist, so she just asked me to talk to you guys a little bit about different types of aphasia. So aphasias are caused when there's a stroke or some sort of blockage to different parts of the brain. Different areas correlate with different aphasias, which we're going to talk about in a second. But the first thing that you need to know is that there are 8 different types of aphasia, and we break those into 2 groups. So there's non-fluent aphasias and then fluent aphasias. Non-fluent aphasias are aphasias where people have 0 to 5 words, so basically less than 5 words. Whereas fluent, you have 9 or more words. That's how we kind of categorize if we think it's a fluent or non-fluent type. So first we're going to talk about non-fluent types of aphasia. So the first one is Broca's aphasia. This affects Broca's area in the brain, which is the Brodmann area 44-45. It's like the left lateral frontal portion of your brain. So this type of aphasia, you have good auditory comprehension, so you can understand what's being said to you, but poor repetition. So if you ask someone with this type of aphasia to repeat a sentence or even a word sometimes, that can be really difficult. Another big problem with this type of aphasia is they have a lot of word finding. We call that anomia problems, and they use a lot of substantive words such as like or to kind of fill in for words that they can't think of or can't say. Kind of a fun fact about this type of aphasia is that a lot of times people with this type of aphasia resort back to almost like a non-filter type of word output, and so they will use curse words that maybe they haven't used in years, and that's all they can get out. The second type of non-fluent aphasia, is transcortical motor aphasia. There's also another fluent type of aphasia called transcortical sensory aphasia, and they're very similar. The difference is with transcortical motor, it's a different area of the brain that's affected. So it's right, like anterior and superior to Broca's area, and it's the anterior frontal paramedian part of the brain. So this type of aphasia is non-fluent, so 0 to 5 words that they can put out. They have good auditory comprehension and good repetition. Their problems really come with initiation. They have a hard time initiating what they want to say. And then they also have word finding problems and have a lot of incomplete sentences. So the third type of non-fluent aphasia is mixed. So this can be really different parts of the brain. It's on a specific part, and it's also obviously non-fluent, so it's 0 to 5 words. They have pretty poor auditory comprehension, so they can't really understand what's being said, and really poor repetition. They have a lot of word finding difficulties, but it is better than a global aphasia, which is what I'll be talking about next. So global aphasia, it affects the whole parasylvian region of the brain, and it goes into the sub-adjacent white matter really deep. And so this has really poor auditory comprehension, really poor repetition, and a ton of word finding difficulties, and a lot of stereotypic prosodic variation, which is where you have no real cadence to your speech. It's just kind of random. So that's the worst type of aphasia you can have, is global. Very hard to recover from and very difficult to treat because, again, they don't really understand what's being said to them, and it's very difficult to work with someone that doesn't understand why they need help. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the fluent types of aphasia. So the first one is Wernicke's aphasia. So as you can imagine, that affects Wernicke's area of the brain, which is the superior temporal gyrus. So with this, it has 9 or more words, obviously, which they can say like in a string. So it sounds like they're making conversation, but it's just gibberish. So they have like prosodic features to their speech, but it doesn't make any sense, and they cannot comprehend what's being said to them. They also have really poor repetition. So if you ask, these are just different ways we classify different types of aphasia, is by their auditory comprehension and their repetition, and then their unique features to each one. They have a lot of anomia, like I said, prosodic speech, but they have a lot of errors in their speech and neologisms, which are like words that are made up. And then they also have a lot of perseverations. Then there's transcortical sensory, which we already talked about, transcortical motor. They're very similar. The difference is that in transcortical sensory, we're talking about a parieto-temporal gyrus lesion, but it doesn't hit Wernicke's area, so that's where they're different. It has poor auditory comprehension, but really good repetition. So that's kind of the difference with with transcortical motor and transcortical sensory. Transcortical motor has good auditory comprehension. They also have a lot of word finding difficulties. They use a lot of non-specific terms to kind of circumlocate around what they're trying to say. And then they have a lot of semantic paraphasias where they're replacing a word with something else that it may mean sort of the same thing, but it's not what they're trying to get at. It's semantic, so it's meaning. Next is conduction aphasia. This is a damage to the supramarginal gyrus and underlying white matter that's near Wernicke's. It's 9 or more words. They have good auditory comprehension, but really poor repetition. So they do a lot of self-corrections because they can hear that they're making mistakes. People with Wernicke's and transcortical sensory, they can't really tell that they're making mistakes. In their mind, they're speaking clearly. But conduction, they can tell they're cognizant of that because they have good auditory comprehension. So they try and self-correct a lot. They have a lot of phonemic paraphasias, so that would be like if they were trying to say the word spoon and they said like swoon instead, just getting some of the letters wrong and the sounds in the word. So that's conduction aphasia. The last one is anomic aphasia, which it affects the angular gyrus. It has good auditory comprehension, good repetition, but they have a lot of word finding problems. So they can understand what's happening, but they speak in a lot of non-specific terms, kind of like transcortical sensory, because they can't figure out what word they're wanting to say. They can't get it out. They circumlocate a lot, and they have a lot of paraphasic errors, so just like replacing words, it could be phonemic, could be semantic, different meanings, or just mixing up some sounds and letters. And then, again, they have significant word finding difficulties. So, another thing I should have said at the beginning about fluent and non-fluent aphasias is that with fluent aphasia, a lot of times, not always, they can't understand that they're making mistakes. In their mind, they think they're speaking perfectly. With Broca's, it's like they know what they want to say, but they cannot get the speech out. So there's almost like a block, if that makes sense. Yeah, so that's aphasia. There's a lot of different ways to treat. So I won't get into that, but that's just kind of like a basic overview. If you had any extra questions about it, I can answer those. My email is ellie.zumbrin@gmail.com. And there's a really good chart all about aphasias that I'll also send to Pam for her to post for you guys. So I hope you're having a good semester, and thanks a lot for listening.